used with an atlatl. Or that middle thing is like a pocket knife. You just carry that around. About 10,000 years ago, they started, once they started eating more plant food and things like that. Archaic period, 5,000, the late archaic period. Now we're starting to talk about the bow and arrow starting to come into play, pottery starting to come into play. We did have a climate change here. This is Nebo Hill. Kansas City is down in the, you'd have to go down in the lower right-hand corner down toward the floor to get to Kansas City. That's over there, pretty close to that amusement park, whatever it's called, on the other side of Kansas City, to give you a rough idea of where Nebo Hill is. Met Shippey's house was fairly close to there, so he could probably almost walk over there. And Seltzer Springs, to give you another idea where it is, overlooks the Missouri River. That's a quarter in the middle to give you an idea of, these aren't arrowheads, these are projectile points used with an atlatl. About 5,000, 3,000 years ago, is when they lived at Nebo Hill. We started to be horticulturalists about that time, raising their own food production, growing stages. Ceramic, pottery started coming into play. These people developed into the woodland period. This is the first time in the United States, we have to overlook the Merrimack Springs people because they had pottery earlier and the bow and arrow earlier than these people did. Early woodland people, we started seeing some. All of a sudden, these people, because they had pots to store their food in, they had the bow and arrow, hunting was easier, they were living in one place, growing food, they had more time on their hands than they ever did before, so now religious comes along for the first time. So they started becoming very, very aware of figures that represented effigy things like that. I don't think we had any Baptists or Methodists at that time, but pottery was the main breakthrough. Main weapon was still probably an atlatl, this early stage of the early woodland. Pottery was tempered with grit, crushed gravel, sometimes recycled pottery. These are some of the effigy pipes that I have in my collection. They're made out of, I have some made out of, the ones made out of clay are very rare. I have 2 or 3 of those, but most of mine are stone. Here's the type of pottery that the Merrimack Springs people made, the round bottom on them. They had pipes, and they grew. You can still find local tobacco out here. The Hopewell people is kind of a unique people that lived. They were probably the descendants of the Mississippian people. That the long period of time, archaeological people didn't think the Hopewell people came this far west, but they were on the other side of the Mississippi River, but they did. And they had a lot of effigy, they were the first mound builders to start building mounds. They later developed into the Mississippian people. This is one of the clay pipes that I have. It's probably the Hopewell pipe. They were the first people to use copper. They did practice horticulture, beans. This is what a woodland village would look like if we saw one today. Stone and clay pipes, arrowheads. Now that's a dime, so now you know the size. These are the true arrowheads. The small ones were probably used for turkey, things smaller game. The bigger ones were used for deer and rabbits.
Hey, Jerry, how do you tell the difference between an atlatl and
The points. Well, atlatl points are going to be a little bit bigger, and if you try to visualize one of those on the end of an arrow shaft, it would just be too big. So that would probably be an atlatl point. Is that what you're talking about? And the smaller ones, you say, okay, that would fit on an end of an arrow. I could visually see that going someplace. And that's the way, plus the fact that the arrows are associated with pottery, because the bow and arrow and the pottery came about at the same time. So if you're in the field looking for stuff and you start finding, if you don't find any pottery sherds at all, and you're only finding big knife blades and big blades, and then you find something like this, then the probability, unless you do a carbon-14 test, you don't know for sure, but the probability is they're probably atlatl points. Because there's no pottery, there's no evidence of pottery, there's no evidence of a lot of smaller points. But if you start finding the real small points, like those over on, like this one, which is only about ½ an inch long, then you're going, okay, and then you start finding other ones that are a little bit bigger. You say, okay, fine, those are probably true arrowheads. Does that answer your question, kind of? These are really neat because they're made out of stone. I can't imagine taking a rock and okay, dear, here. The women did most of the work on these things. Merrimack Springs, I put this a little later, it probably should have been up further in my presentation, but they were the people that, they did contact the Mississippian people, so they were here. This is an axe that's probably a ceremonial axe. It's about 9 or 10 inches long. It's highly polished. It probably really wasn't used where you can see the hematite axe has a lot of wear on it. This one doesn't have any wear on it at all. So this is probably a ceremonial axe that the chief of one of the Mississippian villages had in his groups. I got some other things here. Mississippian period. This is what a Mississippian small village looked like. They had large areas that cultivated corn as their major crop. Corn was like money. And so the headquarters, the Cahokia people in St. Louis was like Washington, D.C. to us. That's where the head government was. And then all of the outskirting villages had to pay them in corn for their taxes. I mean, they had a very sophisticated system set up. And it fell apart when they kept getting so far apart. I imagine somewhere down in Oklahoma where there was Mississippi people, I'm not going to send corn up to St. Louis for my taxes. You know, heck with them. You know, they don't do anything for us. Kind of like government today. You know? So, anyway, beautiful artwork though. These people were really into design. Very small points. Atlatl wasn't used at all anymore, but strictly bow and arrow. Might have used the spear occasionally. These are conch shells that are carved conch shells that are just gorgeous. There's some in almost any museum that has Indian artifacts has some of these conch shells. This is out of Wool Rock Museum in my hometown. East St. Louis is full of Cahokia mounds. The biggest mound in the United States is the Cahokia Mound across the river there in Illinois. I have these in my collection, and they are, this one, the handle and everything is all stone. And I went, this doctor in Kansas, this old family doctor, made house calls back right over here. Dr. Brenner, does anybody know Dr. Brenner? He was my doctor, and he made house calls. And so this guy made house calls. Instead of getting paid, if the farmer couldn't pay him, they would give him an Indian relic. So when he passed on, he had this estate sale, and I went up there not expecting to get anything because I couldn't afford it. But I ended up getting this, these pieces from this estate sale that he had gotten. And I think it came from out west because it has a dolphin on the top of it, it looks like to me. But it's probably definitely Mississippi. Period. You can see this guy is holding one of those things in his hand, not that kind of axe, but this is the Mississippian people